Hello dear students, I welcome you all in today's topic, that's typology of political parties. The objectives of the lecture are, first one is to analyze the typologies of political parties. Second, to analyze the different models of political parties given by different theorists. Third, to examine the party organization and their working. Dear students, there are many classifications of political parties, but Duverger's classification is considered the most authoritative and influential. Epstein elaborated on Duverger's thesis and Sartori offered another formulation. Duverger's typology of organization of political parties has two dimensions: the structure as direct or indirect and the basic elements of party. This demarcation is based on a horizontal plane of unitary organizations, the direct structures, while indirect structures are confederations of different bodies. The latter are uncommon and are usually found in socialist and Catholic parties. However, a large number of political parties contain both characteristics. For example, the British Labour Party. The basic element of party are found in vertical plane, that is, the units from which the parties consolidate both direct and indirect parties are composed of caucus, the branch, the cell and the militia. Let me briefly explain these one by one. First one, the caucus. It's the early form of the party. It manifested in legislative assemblies during the pre-democratic period and transitional phase of early democratization. It's a small organization of like-minded people, and expansion is possible only through tacit co-option or formal nomination. It's a group of political elites, with the leader controlling the areas of influence after co-opting similar leaders throughout the nation. Caucus parties are highly decentralized with a loose organization. Second one is branch. It's based on mass membership. Recruitment is attempted to enhance resources, but not at the behest of local elite, or to use Duverger's term, the notabilities. Branch parties are closely interlinked with central control and regulation. Caucus parties emerged in the pre-democratic legislative organs, whereas branch parties were created mainly outside the parliamentary arena by those excluded from parliamentary politics. Third one is cell. It's an invention of the communist parties. Here, quality was more important than numbers and admission was centralized, unlike the branch parties. The key organizational unit was not linked to geography but to workplace. Given the primacy of the urban proletariat and the rejection of the rural peasantry, it focused on organizing the proletariat. Elections formed only a small part of this setup. It also developed the concept of whole-timers, giving life and meaning to Lenin's doctrine of professional revolutionaries. Fourth one, the militia. Militia's origin is linked to the fascist and other extreme right-wing groups that arose between the two world wars. Its functions centered on activities that had little or no link with electoral politics. It was a private army with the recruitment made along military lines, both in composition as well as in structure. A pyramidal structure emerged, which was instrumental in forming larger groups. Duverger argued that the branch party was better than the caucus party. Competition for votes forced caucus parties to transform themselves into branch parties, or at least assimilate most of their features. The cell and militia parties were highly ideological and remain on the fringe in liberal democracies. Duverger's argument was not that all political parties would eventually have a similar organization, but that the logic of electoral politics would compel parties to modify their organizations in order to make them as competitive as possible. The fundamental sociological difference between a cadre party and a mass party continues even today. Cadre parties are usually the older 18th century parties consolidating around the political ideologies of liberalism and conservatism. Mass parties are a creation of 20th century. These were consolidated with the extension of franchise. Electoral competition was a key in Duverger's theory of party organization. But Epstein says that party organization were shaped in response to competition for votes. He also questioned Duverger's European bias. Duverger considered the American party system a continuation of caucus system, as American parties had never encountered a challenge from a socialist party. Epstein, in contrast, thought that American party system was best suited for modern election campaigns, as in this age of television, mass media and opinion polls, there is no need for great number of party members to mobilize votes. Interest groups and individual donations are more important than mass membership. A large party membership is also a hindrance to flexibility. Epstein concluded that in liberal democracies, the determining factor would come not from the left but from the right, as practiced by the Republican Party in the US. Epstein ignored the difference in the political evolution of Europe and the US, a fact cogently dissected by Duverger. Sartori's classification was based on the two assumptions of party fragmentation and ideological distancing. Party fragmentation is based on the number and relative size of political parties in the legislature. Ideological division relates to left-right ideological differentiation, the attitude of parties towards the regime and other parties towards the system. In his formulation, ideologically motivated, extreme parties were likely to be anti-system, whereas centrist parties would not hold such extreme position. His model was based not on the competitive party system, but on the direction of party competition, which could be either centripetal or centrifugal. In centripetal system, there is a strong pull towards political center, and parties cannot take up a hard line. In centrifugal competitive system, the political center is weak, and that encourages parties to espouse extreme positions. A two-party system is characterized by low party fragmentation and minor ideological distancing between parties in a centripetal order. The political party taking an extreme position would lose electorally and be forced back to the center. A polarized multi-party system is the opposite. It is characterized by a weak center and the existence of extremist parties. The lack of an alternative weakens the centrist parties during times of governmental unpopularity. Two other subdivisions of the model are the moderate and the multi-party system. The former reflects a moderate level of party fragmentation and centripetal competition. Such systems have 3 to 5 parties. Later, formation reveals a high level of party fragmentation with no centripetal competition. The parties do not take up extreme position. Such situations arise when there are two identifiable subcultures which appeal to group solidarity but also cooperate in government formation. This prevents a movement towards extremism. Sartori also mentioned a special category found in the early period of democratization, an automized multi-party system in which 15 to 20 small parties competed. Such systems were temporary as they either collapsed or led to a more stable party system. Furthermore, Robert Mitchell's starting point of classical study of political parties is the hypothesis that in organization committed to the realization of democratic values, there inevitably arise strong oligarchic tendencies, which present a serious, if not inseparable, obstacle to the realization of those values. It is the organization which gives birth to the domination of the elected over the electors, of the mandataries over the mandators, of the delegates over the delegators. Who says organization says oligarchy. Thus, Mitchell summed up his famous iron law of oligarchy. Mitchell was dissatisfied with psychological, that is motivational, explanations of the oligarchic tendencies in organizations. His whole analysis emphasized the constraints derived from organizational needs, the growth of the organization, the need to make rapid decisions, the difficulties of communicating with the members, the growth and complexity of the tasks, the division of labor, the need for full-time activity, and from the consequent processes of selection of leadership and development of knowledge and skills. These processes in turn led to the emergence of stable leaders whose professionalization combined with their consciousness of their own worth, leads to the oligarchy. The important point is that the leaders' deviation from norms they themselves accept is not the result of their motivation. The fact that conformity to certain norms may indirectly lead to deviation from other norms accepted by the same person has, of course, been emphasized by social scientists since Marx. Mitchell studied the special case of men who, despite their commitment to democracy, often acted in ways not conforming to their values because of their demands of organization and other factors of political life. While Mitchell often referred to the psychological predispositions of both the masses and the leaders, he saw these predispositions as fundamentally serving to reinforce or occasionally to weaken the organizational factors, even though at times they also seemed to him to function independently. Significantly, when he presented his theory systematically in a chart, he did not stress the manipulative or illegitimate actions of the leaders, which he discussed at length elsewhere in political parties, but concentrated instead on the factors influencing the active and effective participation of the members in decision making. Michael Curtis, however, says that in all parties, as in groups, leadership is it controls oligarchic difficulty to control and often securely in command of the organization, even when subjected to election. Committee memberships, party newspapers, educational programs, as well as the party programs. Hitchner and Levine, in their classification of political parties, opined that normally people are associated with one party or the other on the basis of their personal views, and that the party membership depends on several other socio-economic forces. Nevertheless, people do associate themselves with one party or the other, taking into account their class, economic interests, hereditary interests, and interests of a particular group. Hitchner and Levine classified contemporary political parties into three categories. These are pragmatic parties, doctrinal parties, and interest parties. Pragmatic parties are normally not committed to particular ideology. Their policies are adjusted according to the requirements of situation. Most of these parties are usually influenced more by the leader of the day and less by the party ideology. The American parties, the British Conservative Party, Canada's Conservatives, India's Congress Party, and Australia's Conservative Party all come in this category. It's believed that the parties are more pragmatic in two-party systems. This is so because they have to represent from time to time different socio-economic interests. These parties that are committed to the particular ideology and believe in certain principles may be described as the doctrinal parties. The policies are often changed or adjusted according to the domestic or international environmental change, but their ideologies remain unaltered. Socialist parties may be included in this category. These, for example, are the British Labour Party, the Socialist Parties of Belgium and France, United Socialist Party of Chile, or Komai of Japan. It is not that the left-oriented parties alone are doctrinal in nature. There can be even parties of the right in liberal democracies that fall in this category. For example, the Bharatiya Janata Party in India has a definite ideology, but since 1998, it made several adjustments in its policies and programs to be able to adjust with its coalition partners. One another example, the Communist parties and the fascists are totally doctrinal parties. According to Hitchner and Levine, many of the parties in the multi-party system and smaller parties, even in two-party system, generally represent particular interests. Thus, these may be described as interest-oriented parties. When an interest group converts itself into a party, either temporarily or permanently, it comes in this category. Nature of interests may vary from prohibition related to those working for farmers' interests or those seeking interests of a caste or community. The Swiss Farmers' Party, the German Greens, the Irish Nationalist Party of the UK are some examples of such parties. In India, there are a number of such interest-oriented parties. These, for example, include the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, the Peasants and the Workers' Party of Maharashtra, or even the Bahujan Samaj Party committed to the upliftment of the Dalits. The categorization of different parties, as the one already discussed, may be very relevant and useful, yet the real nature of parties can be analyzed only as actors with a particular party system. It is therefore necessary that one must examine the major party system and then relate individual parties to one of these systems or the other. Dear students, besides these, there is a notion of an elite party, catch-all party, extremist party, right and left-wing parties. Let's discuss them one by one. The clique or elite parties. The party as an aristocratic clique with politics revolving around shifting personal alliances was common in European parliaments because, particularly in the era of highly restricted suffrage, each of MPs who made up these parties generally owed his election to the mobilization of his own personal clientele or clientele of his own patron. There was a little need for a party on the ground and certainly not one organized beyond the boundaries of individual constituencies. Hence, there was also no need for a party central office. Within Parliament, however, the advantages of working in concert both to pursue policy objectives and secure access to ministerial office led to the evolution of parliamentary organization, frequently cemented by the exchange of patronage. As electorates expanded, elite parties in some places developed more elaborate local organization, most famously the Birmingham Caucus of Joseph Chamberlain, and some greater coordinations by central office, but the heart of the organization remained the MP and his or her personal campaign and support organization. Similar relationship may exist in developing political systems. In the developed countries, this type of party, the cadre party or a party of individual representation, consists of a group of important figures influential in the local areas of the country. It shall be small, decentralized, lacking in discipline and cohesion both inside and outside the legislature. It will have no real program or ideology and will be held together by the scent of political office. France in particularly has large number of such parties. The mass party, the increasing extension of the suffrage and the effect of class divisions led to the rise of the modern party, the party of integration. Most of these parties are found in developed political system of 20th century. For example, European Socialist Party of today with large mass organization dominated by professional leadership exercising central control over branches and units organized horizontally throughout the country. These parties are well disciplined inside and outside the parliament. In developing nations, mass parties have been created by elite groups, or they sought to mass support either to achieve certain objectives and the implementation of ideological convictions or to maintain or extend their control. In such parties, however, there is a large tension and struggle for influence among the different groups, the mass organization, the party leadership, and local constituent bodies. Party conferences are the place where the programs debated and framed. But the real powers generally lie in the parliamentary leadership of the party. Next one is extremist party. Extremist parties are akin to the extremist ideological groups. They are dedicated to overthrow the system. Moreover, these are based on small cells or militant groups and subjected to strong discipline and the acceptance of the policy of the leadership, which is difficult to displace. Relationships between the party organization and parliamentary groups also differ from that of clique and mass party. In other words, unlike the clique and the mass party, in extreme ideological parties, the party organization tends to dominate the group and tightly control parliamentary representatives in a variety of ways, such as financial dependence, voting discipline, and possible expulsion for differences from accepted policy. Party also tries to obtain harmony through a number of ways, such as by party caucus at which parliamentary and non-parliamentary leaders can meet, by organization of the executive committee of the party to include parliamentary representatives, by allowing the executive committee to attend meetings of parliamentary party, or by overlapping of the leadership of the different groups. Next one is left and right wing parties. Parties are also classified on the basis of ideological orientation. Left wing parties refer to the progressive, socialist, and communist parties with a commitment to change, while right wing parties generally prefer to maintain the status quo, stressing on continuity. This distinction is seen as at best simplistic and at worst deeply misleading. Most parties tend to have left and right wing factions within themselves. The notion of left and right wing parties originated with the seating arrangement in the French Assembly after the 1789 revolution. The revolutionaries were placed on the left and the reformists on the right. The emergence of new political issues such as environment, animal rights, feminism, and the blurring of old class polarities have rendered the ideological divide between the left and the right. Next one is catch-all parties. Otto Kirchheimer's conception of catch-all party was part of his more comprehensive theory of party transformation. Kirchheimer originated the term catch-all for political parties and remains influential as a touchstone. Focusing on the historical development of different types of political organizations, Kirchheimer observed that political parties were attempting to exchange effectiveness in depth for a wider audience and more immediate electoral success. So, dear students, let's conclude today's lecture. Political scientists have developed typologies and models of political parties since long to understand the working of political parties. It was an effort to explain the essential features of partisan organization. The result of their analysis is that the literature today is rich with various categories of party types, some of which have acquired the status of classics and have been used by scholars for decades, like Duverger, Kirchheimer, Newman, etc. Political parties have not emerged or evolved in continuous unilinear manner, and neither have they converged on a single model of party. Instead, we believe that changes in the organizational forms, electoral strategies, programmatic objectives, and ideological orientation of parties are the products of multiple causal processes. This was all about today's lecture. I hope you all have enjoyed. See you next time in next lecture. Thank you.